Yes, absolutely. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or asked upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Sparta Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be advertised by having the date, time, and place thereof posted at the Sparta Board of Education, Office 18 Mohawk Avenue, as designated by the Board of Education for posting of such notice in a public place. Written notice was emailed on January 6, 2023 to the New Jersey Herald, the Star Ledger, tapintosparta.net, and to the Township Clerk, specifying the date, time, and place of this meeting.
Thank you. Roll call.
Ms. Collier?
Here.
Ms. Keeling?
Here.
Mr. Knapp?
Here.
Ms. McMichael?
Here.
Mr. Paleski?
Here.
Ms. Pitzer?
Here.
Ms. Seelander?
Here.
Dr. Serrano?
Here.
Mr. Morris?
Here. All rise for the pledge. Now we're going to move on to presentations. Tonight we have an audit presentation by Catherine Mantell. She's right here, if you can begin with that.
Thank you very much. See some new faces around the board circle, and it's a pleasure to be working with Sparta and all of you. So thank you for that opportunity. So quickly, we're engaged to do an audit of the financial statements of the district. We also are required to review compliance with NJDOE regulations. And in addition to that, when the district expends over $750,000 in federal grant awards and or state awards, you're subject to a state and or federal single audit. You are subject to all of that. So this report goes through those phases, very extensive audit. So the report itself is about 164 pages long, and so for the benefit of the board, I try to pull the highlights. And I do say to everyone that the financial information that I've extracted is really what a board member wants to have a general understanding of. So at the end of the year, we talk about fund balances, and I compare the fund balances from June of 21 to June of 22. And as you'll see, they're down 2.2 million. And when you look at that, you look at capital reserve is down 1.6. Maintenance reserve was down 300,000. That's because monies were withdrawn for projects during the year. The excess surplus from the prior year is budgeted in the next ensuing year, so that's why that decreases. You had only 195,000 of excess surplus this year. The unemployment account is whatever the employee and board withholdings or deposits are compared to any unemployment claims that are paid for the year. Year-end encumbrances are the open purchase orders, so that can fluctuate depending on whether you have projects occurring over the summer or not. And designated for the subsequent year, again, is what was budgeted in 22-23. The unassigned is the free balance, the savings that the district has for the future, and the state regulates that amount cannot exceed 2% plus any unbudgeted extraordinary and transportation aid, which is awarded late in the year, so they allow you to add that to it. For the past 2 years for the pandemic, they increased that to 4%, and so that number's at 2.9 million at June of 23. It's going to revert back to 2%, and it's going to be closer to 1.4 million is 2%. And then again, another factor is the unbudgeted extraordinary aid. The extraordinary aid rates that have been reimbursed doubled during the pandemic. So that could drop as well. So all that means is that the unassigned balance will be smaller which will allow you to either put money in reserves or to have it as excess surplus for a next subsequent year. In the middle of the front page, I talk about how you had that $2.2 million reduction. You do have some excess revenue from miscellaneous, which is transportation fees or tuition fees, interest, which isn't a significant factor, but those are the local revenues. On the state side, we are required to report certain payments that the state makes on behalf of the district as revenue and expenses. So if anybody were looking through the CAFR, I show the number that you'll see in the CAFR and what the adjustment would be to show you what the net effect is. So you had a shortfall in one revenue, and then you had excess extraordinary aid and non-public transportation aid that netted to a negative $8,600. Federal is semi. Revenue was a little bit shorter than anticipated. And then the biggest thrust to regenerating the fund balance that you use for your budget is what you're able to achieve in savings and not spend from your budget. And so this year it was 1.777. You had $500,000 in open encumbrances. Let me go back to that. I'm sorry, I don't know how it jumped. I didn't touch it. Hang on 1 second. Which left a net effect for unexpended of 2.2 million. That's not right. 1.7 minus 5 is 1.2 million, forgive me. So that's a little bit less than it's been in the past, but there has been a roller coaster over the last 2.5, 3 years. With the influx of those federal grants, some spending wasn't made from the budget. It was charged to those grants, so you did have, I like to call it a false positive. And so we were very advisory, telling our clients, you know, make sure you're using those federal grants for one-time costs, because if they were being used for operations, obviously they wouldn't be there in 2 or 3 years. So the district has been very mindful about that. And then you had budgeted fund balance, you withdrew money from capital and maintenance reserves. Net effect is a decrease of 2.2 million. And then at the bottom of the first page, I like to show the board what you've been using in your budget. So for 21-22, $750,000 has been the norm for the amount of money that you put forward to the next year's budget. You also appropriated an additional $131,000. You're allowed to do that because the 2%, 4%, whatever gets added to that, the board is allowed to appropriate for any reason. It doesn't have to be for thorough and efficient ed. So I explained that whole scenario about where we've been for the past 2 years, 2%, 4%, what it will come back to next year, and that it doesn't mean you're going to have less fund balance. It just means it's going to be in a different category. And then on the second page, I just show you what changed in the capital reserve account. You started with 5.5 in capital reserve, you withdrew 1.4, and then you withdrew another 239 by resolution. You ended the year with 3.9 million. In the 22-23 budget that you're in right now, you withdrew 2.285. So that leaves you with 1.7, and then depending on whether you can deposit money this year or, see where you go from there. And then on the maintenance side, you had $1 million, you used 300,000, you're down to 711. You withdrew 300,000 in your 22-23 budget, which will bring you down to 400,000, and then you'll probably withdraw another 300,000 for your 23-24 budget. So you're going to be very mindful looking at how you operate for 22-23 and seeing if you can put money in reserves. You should be able to, because you're going to do that decrease in the 4% to the 2%, but you have to be very careful to monitor expenditures. And like I said, during the fiscal year 22, a lot more of the budget was spent than in the past. And then on the enterprise fund, that's the food service fund. Again, that changed significantly due to the pandemic. You're in the federal subsidy program, and so the subsidies were extensive. So in '21, they were 524,000. This year, they were 1,349,000, so that's a big increase. And then with that, it was very difficult for a lot of districts to keep this USDA requirement under control, and that is that they say you should not have more in net cash resources, which is just taking your assets minus your liabilities. It should not exceed 3 months' average expenditures. So we do the calculation, and we did have a finding in your management report saying that the district had 378,000. The maximum was 331. You were 46,000 over. Based on what has been happening for the past 2 years, I think you have it very much under control, and I don't think that that's a fatal error. I think that when we get to June of '23, you'll probably be within that calculation. And then the last piece of information that I like to share with you is the long-term liabilities. And again, the district has bonds outstanding from different capital projects that were authorized. When you sell bonds, sometimes there are premiums associated with those bonds, and they're amortized over the life of the bond. So as you're paying them down, the premiums are being amortized. And then for the past 8 years, districts in New Jersey have been required to report the net pension liability only for the PERS because TPAF is paid by the state. And so that liability over the last 5 years has been decreasing. So you'll see it went from 13.8 million down to 9.9. Again, those figures are calculated by actuaries and are audited by auditors of the state pension system. And so that information is disseminated to us, and we have to evaluate it. We have to make certain calculations. And other than that, we don't really audit it. And then capital leases payable are the capital leases that the district has engaged. One point of information is during 21-22, the district authorized an ESIP project for $7.3 million, and there were other lease agreements for $750,000. And then the compensated absences are the unused sick and vacation time that the employees have, and that generally doesn't fluctuate by a large amount. And so that's pretty much a synopsis of the financial condition of the district. I told you that the audit is 3 parts: financial statements, NJDOE regulation, and federal and state single audit. And through all that the district has to prepare and show to us and all the procedures that we have to follow, we have no audit recommendations. Over the course of time, occasionally the district will have an audit recommendation, but the people in the district are very conscientious about everything that they do. Everyone who's in the business office is educated, they go to meetings, they understand what's going on. With these federal grants, there was a lot of training associated with them, so you're very well prepared for what the expectations are, and you meet them. And in our tenure as the auditor, we've always had a very wonderful relationship with the people. I love it when people in the office will say, I don't understand this, or I don't know this, or this happened, what do you think? And so people are very straightforward with us in terms of what occurred during the year, in addition to us doing our own procedures. So again, takeaway is in every single audit that we did this year, we put a management suggestion in for these federal funds that have been awarded. We do this compliance supplement, and the compliance procedures that we have to perform are so much less than if they came out and did monitoring. And so don't be surprised if Sparta were selected that they would come up with more things, because they do a much more intense review. But at the end of the day, I think that everyone here does a really good job, and I always say that the tone starts at the top. So it starts in this room, at this table, and the people that are here. And you really do have wonderful administration, very cooperative, and again, very smart. So that's my report, and if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
No questions? Thank you.
You're welcome. If anyone ever has a question, just, channel it to me through your school business administrator.
Will do, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I hope you have a wonderful 2023.
All right, next, we have up Dr. Beck and Ms. Rossi for the Start Strong assessment results.
Just Ms. Rossi.
You're not going up?
Good. You don't do this one?
Oh, yeah, good. I can see. Okay. Good evening, everyone. So what I'm about to share with you, I want you to know this has been published online. So if you're in the audience and you want to follow along, you can feel free to do so. So we took the Start Strong assessments in, I believe the window was like the end of August till it was extended to mid-October. And the Start Strong assessments, this is only the second time they've ever been implemented before in the state of New Jersey. They were designed to help us get information on students when the standardized assessments, the typical spring standardized assessments, were canceled due to COVID and interrupted learning associated with it. So the goal of these Start Strong assessments is to look at the various ways we can support our students. These are results and data that help us, that complement other measures that we have to help us identify how to support each individual child and how to look at our curriculum as a whole. Oops. They are administered much faster in a shorter sitting time than our spring assessments. And we were able to pull some immediate results from those assessments because they have an on-demand feature, which lets us see student data as soon as the testing period is over. These do not replace spring assessments. So what's unique about this year is that we did in fact test in the spring, last spring of 2022, and yet we implemented these assessments again in the fall. So kind of looking at similar standards, but through different lenses. The spring assessments look at proficiency, and the fall assessment, which is our Start Strong assessment, looks at levels of support needed. And there's no comparison. So there's, that's one of the recommendations that the state shares, is that they don't provide like a county average, a state average, a district factor group. It's not about looking at other schools. It's about looking at your students and the needs that they have and how to respond to them adequately. So again, they took these in the fall, and this is a subset of standards from last school year. So they're not assessing them on current standards, but past standards. And they do not have the same breadth as a NJSLA spring assessment because of the shorter time frame. So what they do have, again, is levels of support that can be provided to students. And that's identified in these three ranges: strong support, some support, and less support. So again, as I kind of go through these, I think I spoke about a lot of them. One thing that's unique is now that we have the NJSLA scores once more, I think you are prone to want to compare this data to that. And there's no real way to do that. The test is not designed in that way, and it's kind of looking at apples and oranges. So in looking at comparisons, there really aren't any to be made between spring NJSLA and fall Start Strong, even though they're assessing similar standards. But we do look at our curriculum planning to see if there are new things that these assessments have shown for us. We look at the varied levels of supports that we can provide to students based on the needs that are identified. We use evidence-based practices, like looking at the New Jersey Department of Ed Learning Acceleration Guide, which identifies multiple principles for what best practices are in learning acceleration. And we look at various other measures to compare to this one data point. One thing that is challenging for us that we've learned with our own internal assessments is that a major assessment at the start of the school year, we know that there's such a thing typically that many students encounter called summer slide, where it takes kids a minute to get back to school, and we kind of say get back on the bike and get used to being in a classroom and showing mastery of the standards that they've learned. And so to complete a standardized test in the fall is unique. especially having those results from the spring. So I'm interested to see if that will continue. When we look at our district results, you can see these are banded. So again, we have less support, some support, and strong support. These show us kind of similar information that we've gleaned from other assessments, both standardized and local assessments, which is that in the areas of math, ELA, and science, there's various levels of support that are needed, and we are already aware of those things. In language arts standards are like a balloon, so they kind of inflate over time. They're not new standards taught each year, but more complex standards that grow and add to what makes a student literate. Our math standards are very different, so when we look at learning gaps, it's making sure we're filling in content, because the content grows and is more like stepping stones on top of each other. And of course, our science curriculum follows a similar suit, where we're looking at different content each year. And so how to remediate things that need more attention as we move on and continue to tackle the standards that are aligned for that particular school year. These are the results by grade level, and so I'm not going to speak to all the numbers, but I will show you how to read it and kind of talk to you about the analysis. So for language arts, you can see there's 3 colors. There's a yellow, a blue, and a green. The green stands for less support needed, and so if you follow a row across, you can see the percentage of students. For example, in 4th grade, 47% of students need less support as compared to last year. So the light green, or the lighter color next to that column, shows what the scores looked like from the previous school year. So while this year in 4th grade, 47% of students need less support, last year 45% of students needed less support. Again, looking at 4th grade just as an example, 23% of students need some support. Last year, 21% of students needed some support. And finally, moving over to the yellow column, level 1, 30% of students need strong support, compared to last year, 34% of students need strong support. I think overall, one of the things I'll speak to at the end is that right now, a lot of the data is pretty stable. So we have some gains, and in some unique areas, it shows some loss. So we have to look at the various variables that might affect that loss and the accuracy of how valid that information is in comparison to other measures. When looking at the math results, you can follow those in a similar capacity. So you have your bolded colors, again, level 3, less support. We'll stick with 4th grade. 32% of students need less support after taking the assessment this fall, compared to last year, 36% of students needed less support. Level 2, some support. 35% of students needed some support, compared to last year, where 28% of students needed some support. And that last category, level 1, strong support, 33% of students need strong support, compared to last year's assessment, where 37% of students needed strong support.
Yeah, they pull it up the same way you do for ASI.
Science is laid out in a similar fashion. Again, I think it would be not a timely presentation to read every single number presented to you, but understanding how you can look at it and then sharing with you the overall analysis and conclusions that have been drawn based on careful identification of this information. We also look at Start Strong subgroups, and again, that's in similar fashion. So you could see the key at the top. Less support is the darkest color. Some support is a solid purple, and strong support is identified with a light purple. So you can see the comparison when we look at gender, when we compare males to females. You can see our ethnic and socioeconomic groups as we look across and make those comparisons as well. We continue to look at our subgroups of students with IEPs. 504s, our ELL population, which I do want to, as I talk about the analysis of these scores, revisit at the end, where we will draw some conclusions for you. And then economically disadvantaged students compared to non-economically disadvantaged. So one of the unique things about this assessment is that it doesn't, what that we talk about wishing was available is students who need no support, which I guess the reality is all students need some level of support when we look at, moving them forward and meeting them where they are. But if we wanted to make comparisons, one of the things we look at with all other assessment data is students who are at benchmark or students who are meeting the demands of the curriculum or meeting the content level standards. This assessment doesn't provide that information, which makes it unique. The key areas of attention that I think we've gleaned from the data that was reported on is that our data is mostly stable. So we see some increases, very few decreases. And what that shows us is that we're in a place where, we're not substantially falling in terms of the skills that students are being asked to master. So hopefully we've kind of regrouped from a few years of challenging disruption, and we can continue based on what we've learned from NJSLA in the spring and some of the initiatives that we've put in place. We're going to continue moving forward with those plans, which I'll reiterate to you in just 1 minute. And we think we're back at a stable situation where we can regroup and see how long it takes for our students to recoup the information that was lost over the last few years. When we look at our subgroups, it is our ELL population that is firstly growing and also most impacted. And so as we have more students that need that level of support, we are forced to look at the state models for servicing students who are English language learners and to ensure that we have efficient and effective plans in place for them. And so because of that growing population and because of the state mandates, we are revising our plans for servicing our ELL population. And so this information fits nicely with being meaningful and relevant to the work that we're currently doing. Once again, this is the second time that this has been implemented, and so we don't have a baseline from prior years. The only time that an assessment like this has been implemented is post-COVID, if there's such a thing. So we have to kind of determine, again, what this means and what level of quality data this presents for us. One of the things that we have been recommended by outside professionals and experts is that probably the best way we can use this data is by doing item analysis. And so we've done that. So that's one report that the Start Strong scores really offer us that give us like meaty and useful information. And so if you look at the screen, what you can do is dig into questions, specific questions that are asked. And not only will those questions will first tell you how many students got that question correct or incorrect. And so you can see if many students got a question incorrect, you can drill down and not only see what standard that question was asking, but you can also see the question itself to kind of give us a baseline for how we ask questions related to that particular standard and to ensure there's some alignment between how we assess skills and how these high stakes rigorous assessments assess these skills. And that continues to be work that's meaningful for us that we're already working on that has been helpful to reinforce those efforts. So in terms of response to this, it's very similar to what we saw with our NJSLA data. The first thing is that when we look at tiered supports for students, tier 1 is the curriculum, that we're providing a high quality curriculum for all students. We're fortunate that after going through our most recent QSAC, that does in fact confirm that we have aspects of our curriculum that are in line and are quality. We know that, and of course that measurement definitely confirms that we are providing evidence-based services to students in a comprehensive way. One thing we're doing that's very different this year is that when we look at the additional supports that students need beyond the core curriculum, normally in past years, the way, let's say, an intervention system works is that students are referred, and then as a data team, we would take a close analysis of those students who get referred for services and supports through our intervention program. This year, we're looking at every single student multiple times a year. And so when we look at every single student, that allows us to see students who require enrichment supports. We have more students than ever before who are accelerating in math. It gives us an opportunity to look at students who are meeting benchmark or who are just close to. We call that population our on-watch population. And we have different resources and supports we can provide to them. And then, of course, we look at our intervention populations to determine, number one, the growth that they're making, number two, the response that we see from them, and the need for updated or alternative programs. That is not only in the academic realm, but also in our social, emotional, and behavioral supports that we can provide to students through programs like Align or our Student Counseling Center. We are using data to drive our work, like the New Jersey Department of Ed Learning Acceleration Guide, which focuses primarily on the academic supports and the curricular supports that we can put in place, although the first principle talks about ensuring that there's a culture and climate where students are accessible for learning. In addition to that, we are looking at the New Jersey Comprehensive School-Based Mental Health Guide, which also is a part of a whole child being prepared and accessible for learning in a classroom. Interestingly enough, we actually, as a district, are featured on page 43 as a spotlight school district for the work in that area. So I just want to take a minute to thank all the professionals, past and present, who are leading that work and making sure that that support is provided to students throughout this time and all others. We're committed to planning and professional development with district stakeholders, but also with administrators and leaders, teachers, staff members across districts. So sharing what's worked and what hasn't, and how to enhance our practices. And lastly, staying consistent to the things that we're putting in place. We believe in them. They're grounded in research and evidence. We're already seeing students responding to those things, and we feel confident about the future of our students. And so that is the presentation for this evening.
Tara, I have a question.
Yeah.
How accurate do you feel these scores are, specifically in the upper grades?
Yeah.
Specific, because the kids, they know that's not going to reflect their grade, so they just
Yeah.
go, throw answers on a sheet and leave. So does it really reflect what they actually know in the classroom?
Yeah, so I think that varies by child. You're right about that. There are some students who, for multiple reasons, come back from the school year and are like not in the flow of school. They're just kind of like reacclimating to being in a classroom and being a learner and demonstrating their skills. And so for some, it's that. It's like shaking off the rust and getting ready for learning. For others, yeah, I agree with you. They know this isn't a grade. This isn't a graduation requirement. We don't even know what Start Strong is, quite honestly. It's new, but we have to do our due diligence and look at the data. So when we look at students, as I said to you before, and we look at multiple measures to look at the supports they need, we look at things like the NJSLA, the STAR, student grades, attendance, and Start Strong is a measure. So we're not ignoring it, but we're surely not putting all of our eggs in one bucket to say this. We don't know exactly how this represents our students, but it is a piece of information that we can work with responsibly as a school district.
Thanks.
You got it. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, moving on, student representative report.
Yeah, I would just like to re-welcome our student representatives back to the table. And Chad Wood tonight is pulling double duty as our board student representative and also serving as our student council representative this evening for the student council report. I'm going to turn that on.
Thank you, Dr. Beck. Through December and January, we've had a very busy month and months. To begin, on December 19th, we started off with our Spirit Week, which also encompassed Deck the Halls, where students from each grade decorated a hall designated to their grade. And we also, at the end, or in the middle of the week on the Wednesday, the 21st, we had the Winter Pep Rally, which was it was a huge success, a lot of fun, and I think we did a lot right in comparison to other rumors I heard from other schools with a non-so-successful pep rally. I think Sparta's doing a really great job so far. On the 10th of January, we also got the opportunity, some of the executive officers, but also some freshman officers, to go to the NJAC Student Leadership Summit at Montville High School, where we started brainstorming ideas for spring events, and they also brought up the idea of evaluating old traditions and starting new traditions, which leads me to a meeting that happened on Tuesday, where we are issuing the literary partnership with the Alpine Kids students. This was a project that was beginning before COVID with Miss DeLucia and Miss Gallagher, though at the time, obviously once the situation unfolded, it was kind of hard to pursue, but we thought it was a good time to bring it back. A group of students volunteered at the high school and met for an information meeting. Starting at the end of January, students at the high school level will have a chance to sign up for story times, where they will have the opportunity to read and teach new themes for specific stories that can be found in the Alpine School Library. These themes will include leadership and good character. We hope to do at least one, if not two, virtual story times with the kindergarten at the end of the week of the school year. We will also attempt to meet with them in person with the high school students and kindergarten students and kind of have the full circle moment with the students. And we wanted to start new traditions with our younger schools and get high school students and younger students involved together. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad.
Thank you. Okay, approval of minutes. Get a motion?
Motion.
Warren, thanks. Second,
Second.
Vanessa, discussion? Joanne?
Ms. Collier,
Yes.
Ms. Keeling,
Yes.
Mr. Knapp,
Yes.
Ms. McMichael,
Yes.
Mr. Pellecci,
Yes.
Ms. Pitzer,
Yes.
Ms. Seelander,
Yes.
Dr. Serrano,
Yes.
Mr. Morris.
Yes. Superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. I would like to start by formally recognizing School Board Recognition Month. On this evening's agenda, you will find a full resolution formally recognizing the hard work and selfless dedication of our Board of Education and the boards of education across the state of New Jersey. I said it before and I'll say it again. Thank you for all your commitment and thank you for your support of our district. I would just like to circle back to the audit presentation and just reiterate the fact that there were no audit recommendations for the second straight year in our district. District our size, with a budget our size, to have no audit recommendations in one year is quite a feat, but to have it for 2 straight years, it really shows how astute our business office staff is, our current business administrator, our former business administrator, and the hard work of the business office and across the district. The facility assessment report, executive summary. This has been a topic over the past couple of board meetings. I want to provide an update. Last week, I was able to complete the facility assessment report executive summary, and I ran it through our architect and I ran it through our finance and operations committee just to make sure we were all on the same page for what it was. And I shared it directly with the parent who requested it and then posted it on our website. So anyone who is interested can now go to our website where it can be found as the second item under district announcements. The executive summary is an extremely high-level summary of the costs associated with providing each building with regular maintenance and repairs. In December, we received a letter and a certificate from Congresswoman Sherrill recognizing our staff with a 2022 Hero Award in recognition of the meaningful difference our staff has made for others. So we received that certificate, we framed it, we're going to hang it over in the board office, so congratulations to our staff for that. College Board national recognition. We had 17 students that were awarded national African American, Hispanic, Indigenous, and/or rural small town recognition through the College Board's Student Search Service. 17 students in our high school. And forgive me, I'm going to take the time to read their names as we have 2 of the young ladies sitting in the audience tonight. Maya Albuquerque, Ian Bellish, Rachel Berghan, Robert Ferguson, Alicia Gaines, Lorraine Golbranson, Julia Wan, Gayatri Nataraja, Sasha Nelson, Annika Noel, Ariana Paleo, Michaela Riki, Juliet Sanchez, Matthew Schweizer, Sarika Selvaraj, Dean Stas, and Claire Zhu. Congratulations to all of those students. And Sasha and Juliet are the students joining us this evening. An Alpine construction update to provide an update on the restroom project taking place at Alpine. The project is well underway. A short time ago, when the walls were being removed from the current room, the plumbing was exposed and a few asbestos pipe elbows were discovered. The asbestos was not disturbed and the area was secured immediately until it was able to be remediated last weekend. The remediation was successful and the post-project air quality test came back quickly, clearing the building for occupancy over last weekend's extended weekend break. Moving on to athletics and student activities. Congratulations to Mr. Brian Brennan on earning his 300th win as the Sparta High School boys basketball coach. Congratulations to Allie Sweeney and Bryn McCurry, who were named McDonald's All-American nominees for girls basketball. We all knew these ladies were two of the best players in the state, but now they have been honored as among the best players in the nation. Allie Sweeney, again, congratulations to her, who is the latest member of our high school's 1,000 point club. Allie scored her 1,000th point last month against Morris Hills. Some wrestling recognition, the HWS wrestling tournament. We had Bradley Maines, who took second place at 285 pounds. We had Logan Hirinenko, earned a third place at 144 pounds, and a first for our school district. Two young ladies. Paige Weiss was a girls wrestling champion at 107 pounds, and Emma Reeder earned third place at 126 pounds. So congratulations to all of those wrestlers. In ice hockey, Rylan Gibbons earned the New Jersey Devils Player of the Month. Robotics competition was this past weekend. I had the honor of attending that competition. Mr. Morris and I walked through that competition, walked around. Always a sight to see. The robotics team, of course, as they always do, qualified for the state competition. DECA has also seen some success as well, as they always do. A large number of students moved on from regionals to the state competition. And I just wanted to point out, again, as we did during the reorg, that this weekend will be, excuse me, Sparta Middle School's production of Shrek Jr. The show times are Friday at 7 p.m., Saturday at 7 p.m., and Sunday at 2 p.m. And if you've ever seen our Sparta Middle School production, you know this will be another good one. And I will turn this portion over to Tara for curriculum instruction.
Great. So just a few people to acknowledge. I wanted to first give a shout out and thanks to the Sparta Education Foundation. The SEF has been incredibly supportive over the past few years, I think beyond the past few years, but I want to acknowledge them tonight. If you have the opportunity to become involved or supportive in their events, they do a lot for our students and for our district. One in particular that I wanted to speak to a bit is the support that they provided to Mr. Agnar, who is a health PE teacher at Helen Morgan, that helped us to develop and grow the archery program at that school. This was started last winter, and already students, I believe in 5th grade, are participating in a state tournament with an overwhelming number of students who are interested and excited to become proficient in archery. So that's been really great to watch, and we've had a lot of really positive feedback about how and if we can continue to expand such programs. So thank you to teachers, not only Mr. Agnar, but all of our teachers who are interested in having innovative ideas, and thank you to the SEF for your constant support and interest in the programming and the participation of our teachers and our students. I also wanted to speak to a motion that was tabled last week surrounding the health and PE resources and lesson plans to give an update. That was something that we discussed in the curriculum committee meeting last week, I guess. It was positive and it was productive. We identified that we agree on a common goal of providing transparent curricular content so that families can make informed decisions for their children. We actually discussed at length the difference between formal lessons that are developed by publishing companies within core programs or textbook series versus individual teacher lesson plans, which is not what's being requested. We did agree to the following outcomes to ensure clear understanding for all. So 2 things that we will be doing are clarifying some language and making sure that expectations are concrete for people to identify and to refer to. The first is that there'll be added language into the curriculum that reminds staff members to review students who are participating in the extended health lesson, which is the opt-out, prior to starting the family life lesson. These practices are currently in place, but will be made concrete in writing for all to review, as I shared. Another addition will be the family life guidelines. This is something that we've been speaking to over the course of working with the health and PE curriculum. It's something that we've been discussing as a curriculum team and also as a team of professionals. Those statements will be made into a formal document and also included into the curriculum so that, again, they're there for review so that anybody can refer to them at any time. As a reminder, for parents or families who might feel that they're interested in participating in some topics but not all topics, it is an option for you to partially participate. We are working with some parents currently who have that request, and so that is something that can continue to be supported. In the future, we could expand on the language in the letter that we put out that allows for choices to be made early in the school year. And finally, we will be ensuring, just as we do for all curricula, that we will review the curriculum in the natural cycle. So over the course of the summer, we'll continue to take a look at the curricular resources that we have, including looking at additional activities or resources that we want to include after now living this for a full school year. I want to thank the health and PE teachers for their work and their diligence on all of this. We are halfway through the school year, and I think that they've done a really fantastic job and continue to be collaborative partners through this work. That's all.
Thank you. I just have a question on the Alpine renovation. With over the holiday weekend, the renovation, the construction and asbestos removal, how much did that cost?
$13,700.
That's all right. Moving on, HIB report. Okay, a motion.
Motion.
Craig, second.
Second.
Wendy, discussion. Joanne.
Ms. Collier,
Yes.
Ms. Keeling,
Yes.
Mr. Knapp,
Yes.
Ms. McMichael,
Yes.
Mr. Pelesci,
Yes.
Ms. Pitzer,
Yes.
Ms. Seelander,
Yes.
Dr. Serrano,
Yes.
Mr. Morris.
Yes. Do we have any communications? Joanne, do we have any?
Didn't receive anything.
No? Okay, thanks. Delegate liaison reports. For the town council, I know it's new. We haven't reached out yet to set up a meeting, so we look forward to meeting with them. I see Mr. Clark here, so maybe if you could have your people reach out to let us know. I don't know who's on that liaison committee. Our people will call your people. Got it, thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, Kurt. Just one quick thing to share. So SEF is going to be having their wine and food pairing on Saturday, March 4th at the Barnett Hillside Park. So be on the lookout for additional information as well as ticket information.
I attended the Garden State Coalition of Schools meeting, and they had Dr. Beth Johnson, who's from Seton Hall College of Nursing, speaking on exploring the physical and mental health screenings in U.S. schools. And it was really interesting just to see how much that we have already implemented in our district. We are in I'd say about a quarter of schools nationwide that have actually taken time to do that. And, I want to continue to applaud our programming that we have with Align and the other student services to continue to serve the mental health needs of students. And I think in your remarks, Mrs. Rossi, you talked about some of the disparities where we see that, and one of the things that Dr. Johnson pointed out was that in students where there is economic disparity, we often don't see a primary care physician, and where that burden does sometimes fall on the schools to our nurses doing those standards. So obviously we have state requirements that we're meeting, but it did show that we are going above and beyond. I'll share some slides from there, but most of it we already are doing, so thank you. And then they did, Betty Ginsburg, who is one of the liaisons to the board from there, did share about the Start Strong and the need to hear from districts within the coalition. And I guess I would encourage you both, Dr. Beck and Mrs. Rossi, to give your feedback, as the Ed Commissioner has not yet decided yay or nay on next year with Start Strong, and that the Garden State Coalition does feel strongly that it may not be the best use of our students' time, and they would love to hear from members. So I'll provide that contact information for Betsy as well. That's all.
I just have one update. We had a C3 meeting last night here at Mohawk Avenue. It was a planning meeting. Mr. Benson and Mrs. Rossi shared a calendar for a very tentative calendar for what we're doing for the year. It has school-based activities on it as well as district-based activities. We spent a lot of our time talking about the next community activity that we're going to try to put together. We're still not exactly sure what that's going to look like, but the point of it is to really build connections with or without a specific celebration between the schools, the community. So we have a lot of planning going on there, and we do need help planning to make these events successful. So if anybody is interested in joining or helping us plan, you can always reach out to us, and we hope that we have a lot of things for, like I said, the district at a community level and the school level here the rest of the school year.
Anybody else? No. Okay, moving on. Public comment. Public comments are invited on all matters pertaining only to action items at this time. Please state the action item number as well as your name, municipality, and group affiliation, if appropriate for the record. Each participant will be given 3 minutes to speak. All statements should be directed to me as presiding officer. The board or administrator may or may not respond to any questions or comments after the conclusion of public participation. Who's up first?
So this is in regards to the superintendent's report. I didn't catch the number, sorry. I just wanted to thank.
Can you just, well, I mean, we know who you are, but can you state your name? Please?
Sure, Caitlin Gagnon, Summit Road, Sparta.
Thank you.
So first, I just wanted to thank Dr. Beck for your feasibility study summary. I know it took a little bit, but I do appreciate what you shared with us, with the district, and I appreciate your correspondence throughout. As concerning as the results were, I do think we'd like to know what the plans are going forward, maybe a next phase, just to ensure that we're especially not reallocating our obvious issues from one building into another. Because from what I've heard, that seems to be the plan. And before jumping to conclusions, we'd kind of like to hear the next phase. I'd also like to hear how the board plans to address the fact that we're now over the maximum occupancy limitations at Alpine School. What are the legal ramifications of this, if any? And how does it affect fire codes and ventilation, if at all? Thank you.
Before I come up, did we discuss Oprah yet? It was number 10 on the agenda.
Yeah, it's on, we never discuss it. It's on the agenda, though.
I'm Dana Galino. I'm 26 Valley View Trail. Good evening. I just passed around the unredacted email from the Ghost Boys Oprah request. Last year, Mr. Zittimer and Mr. Smith erroneously redacted this email in the Oprah results. They also did not list a reason for the redaction. As per Oprah law, a reason must be listed for every redaction, and there are only 24 approved exemptions to choose from. When Mr. Zittimer and Mr. Smith were asked the reason for the redaction, they stated a reason that is not an approved Oprah exemption. Due to the nefariousness of the situation, a complaint was submitted to the state by a parent, which launched a year-long investigation. There were multiple times during the investigation when Mr. Zittimer and Mr. Smith could have seen the error of their ways, stopped the investigation, and released the email. They did not do that. Finally, the state made a decision on the case in December of 2022 and found that the email should not have been redacted from the original Oprah request, and Mr. Zittimer was to release it at this time. Rather than doing this, Mr. Zittimer opted to appeal the decision with the state. You can see that the first line of the email is regarding Dr. Beck's anticipated attention to Ghost Boys. This is most likely why the email came up in the Oprah search. It was responsive to the request. The rest of the email is regarding masks and has nothing to do with Ghost Boys. However, it is not correct to redact that portion. The reader simply ignores it. I personally do not know why Mr. Zittimer is fighting so much on releasing this email. Everybody makes mistakes. However, I do know that every time Mr. Zittimer completes work on this case, he charges the Board of Education. We are all paying for Mr. Zittimer to continue hiding this email that I have provided to everyone tonight. There are better ways to spend this district's money. I respectfully request that you ask Mr. Zittimer to withdraw his appeal and release the email as per the state's decision in the matter. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes. All right, motion to close public comment.
Motion.
Greg, second?
Second.
Wendy, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to personnel and policy. Motion to move 15.1
Motion.
to 15.19.
Sorry. Motion.
Lauren, second?
Second.
Leanne, Joanne?
Ms. Collier?
Yes, and I just want to acknowledge a couple resignations with that. May I say that now? Sorry, like with that,
With the-
within discussion. I just
Oh,
want to
yeah,
make
discussion.
note
Go ahead.
of,
Yeah, sorry.
we have a couple resignations in our district for very long time service, and we just want to thank Mrs. Bach, Mrs. Caputo, and Mr. Slobosian for their very long time service. I was in Mrs. Bach's first class, and I really honor everything she's done, so, yes.
Any other discussion? Okay, now, Joanne.
Ms. Collier?
Yes.
Ms. Keeling?
Yes.
Mr. Knapp?
Yes.
Ms. McMichael?
Yes.
Mr. Pelesci?
Yes.
Ms. Pitzer?
Yes.
Ms. Seelander?
Yes.
Dr. Serrano?
Yes.
And Mr. Morris?
Yes. Okay, curriculum, motion to move 16.1 to 16.10.
Motion?
Okay, motion.
Motion.
Greg, second.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Discussion? Joanne?
Ms. Collier?
Yes.
Ms. Keeling?
Yes.
Mr. Knapp?
Yes.
Ms. McMichael?
Yes.
Mr. Pelesci?
Yes to everything except for 16.5. I need to abstain because my wife's involved with SEF.
Ms. Pitzer?
Yes.
Ms. Seelander?
Yes.
Dr. Serrano?
Yes.
Mr. Morris?
Yes. All right, moving on to finance. Motion to move 17.1 to 17.10.
Motion.
Vanessa, second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion. Joanne?
Ms. Collier?
Yes.
Ms. Keeling?
Yes.
Mr. Knapp?
Yes.
Ms. McMichael?
Yes.
Mr. Pelesci?
Yes.
Ms. Pitzer?
Yes.
Ms. Seelander?
I need to abstain from 1710. I sit on the high school cheerleading boosters, but yes to everything else.
Dr. Serrano?
Yes.
Mr. Morris?
Yes, and no to 17-7. Operations, motion to move 18-1 to 18-3.
Motion.
Craig, second.
Second.
Vanessa, discussion?
Ms. Collier?
Yes.
Ms. Keeling?
Yes.
Mr. Knapp?
Yes.
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Mr. Pelesci?
Yes.
Ms. Pitzer?
Yes.
Ms. Seelander?
Yes.
Dr. Serrano?
Yes.
Mr. Morris?
Yes. Okay, moving on to old business. No? New business. I have something, I would like to make a motion that from this point forward, we stop live streaming meetings. This started a few years ago during the pandemic. It was great when we had it. There's really no need for it now. Last year alone, we spent $8,000 just to live stream. And as you all know, that money can be spent elsewhere. I know with such a high budget, $8,000 doesn't sound like a lot, but it is. It can be used, throughout the district for many different projects, whatever they may be. But to spend $8,000 solely to live stream when we're here in public with everyone that's here tonight, I just find it's a waste of money to continue spending this year after year after year when it can be used elsewhere. Can I have a second?
Second.
Greg? Discussion?
I just want to ask, do we have a general idea of what the $8,000 cost entails?
I believe it's mainly overtime?
It's, yeah,
Yeah,
wages.
overtime. Okay, we need a roll call?
Before, I'd like to make a comment.
No.
I do respect the intent of where you're coming from with a budget, Mr. Morris, but I have to say that in the essence of transparency and having the ability for all stakeholders in our district to be able to participate in open meetings, I think it's a step in the wrong direction to stop live streaming. Especially with the fact that it's going on YouTube, this is something that obviously we're not paying for that kind of hosting. I would love to see if there are cost measures that we could consider, including even bringing in community volunteers to assist in the tech before we consider taking away that option. All things considered, there's many parents that cannot get here. They have bedtime, they have work, they have other matters, and they want to remain informed. It's also a way that people interpret data differently, and just like we see with our learners, some people can read minutes and get a good essence for it. Other people really need to hear it. I think it's protective for the board and in good interest of our district, and I strongly oppose the live streaming to stop.
Anyone else?
If I could also make a comment, I would like to echo the sentiments of you over there. I'm sorry, I did not know your name. I think
No, we're still learning names, sorry. Lauren.
I love the idea of offering community volunteers. I know that at the high school, they offer a 4-year video program, which I'm sure many students would love the opportunity. I could name a few students myself who would actually be inclined to record if possible. Additionally, I think that when you stream on a platform like YouTube, it provides transparency because they exist there and anyone can rewatch them. And I think it's important that if anyone misses a board meeting, for instance, both of my parents would never be able to make a meeting because they work full-time jobs, which a lot of people do, but still they have a long schedule. So I think it would be a step in the wrong direction to get rid of recording the meetings, especially considering that it costs $13,000 to partially fix an issue in a bathroom. I think $8,000 in the grand scheme of things would definitely be worth spending on recording the meetings rather than the small areas they could affect.
I know what you're saying with the minimum amount of money. I mean, it's $8,000, but it adds up. So if you take all the past years that we've been doing it up to now, so everything adds up year after year. So spending the money cost effect, it's just not a smart investment for the district to have it, to keep live streaming and keep spending the money when you can easily just come to a meeting and sit here like everyone else is here. And, you know, these meetings are scheduled months and months and months in advance. So if there are concerning issues that need to be discussed, someone can attempt to make plans and schedule to come to a meeting if need be.
What about some options as far as getting more bang for our buck if we continue to spend the $8,000 or we bring in volunteers? I think students is a fantastic idea, such as games or the plays after they've gone through the weekend of their performances, posting those on our channel. It doesn't have to be just Board of Ed meetings. There are other options that we could be posting on the channel. Just a thought.
Any other discussion?
I just think it's a great idea. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Vanessa. Or Wendy, sorry. I think it's a great idea, what gentleman in the corner reference. Sorry, I don't know your name. Jack. I think that's a great idea for student involvement, especially on the audio video side. I think that's a great idea, and it could be a way for us to save the money. So,
Yeah, I don't know how it would work for volunteering, if it could be volunteered at zero cost for the students to come here and use their expertise that they're learning in class, that'd be great. I don't know how that works for volunteers as students after school hours at a board meeting. I don't know. I guess that would have to be looked into.
Is this something that we could table for a committee
Yeah,
meeting?
My concern with these motions that are made after public comment is closed is that the discussion is now limited to us at the table, and we're not getting discussion from people who may be sitting here who want
There's
to,
another public comment.
for anything. At the end, they can bring this back up. All right.
We can table it to touch on the gentleman's recommendation at the end of at the end of the table for volunteer. Is that something you look into, Dr. Beck?
Yeah,
How they can volunteer? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So if that's the case, I would withdraw my motion at that case, just to see what avenues we can look at for someone to volunteer. That'd be great. Thanks for your suggestion.
And if I could recommend a name, Mr. Doug Crowland would be a great contact to look into. He's very involved and is in the audio-video program and can do a lot. Just give a name.
You getting paid out for this?
Chad, thank you for your thoughtful suggestions, and I think this proves right away that having student representatives at the table is very valuable to us, so thank you for speaking up, both of you, for being here. Thank you.
I would like to echo that as well, to see a student involved and able to speak at the table amongst a bunch of us adults. It's rather intimidating, even as an adult, so thank you, Chad.
Oh, can that be something, I know you're gonna look into it, but can it be worked into a co-op
Yeah.
for the students?
Yeah, we can look into all options. So that particular setup works for events at the high school, such as plays. So we can look into it.
Okay. All right, any other new business? No? Okay, moving on. Public comment number 2. We use the second public comment period to invite comments on all matters pertaining to the school district. Please state your name, municipality, and group affiliation, if appropriate, for the record. Each participant will receive 3 minutes to speak. All statements should be directed to me as presiding officer. The board or administration may or may not respond to any questions or comments after the conclusion of public participation. Who's up?
I just want to say one thing. What I was trying to say before is that if we had had that motion and voted, it would have been voted on before this second public participation, which was my concern, that there would be no comments before the vote.
So again, Caitlin Gagnon, Summit Road, Sparta. Very quickly to piggyback on what Chad said, excellent recommendation. My husband's actually probably listening and might kill me, but he's an AV manager at Picatinny Arsenal. He would love nothing more than to help volunteer for that position. I know I'm offering his services a little bit prematurely, but once I go home and explain it to him, I'm sure he'll be thrilled. So we have plenty of community volunteers. I'd like to read a statement on behalf of Jen Grana, who couldn't make it this evening. I agree with everything she's written, just to say. So her question, she says, my question is for Mr. Zittimer, because frankly, I think he is the only one at the table qualified to answer it. It is the same question regarding two separate scenarios. First scenario, back in November, an Oprah request was filed that showed a very candid discussion between many high-level administrators regarding class rank. In that Oprah request, many educational professionals, including the assistant superintendent and the director of college and career readiness, seem to agree that the weight placed on class rank for students is no longer necessary and shouldn't be considered as heavily. Dr. Beck was in agreement as well, and it was presented at the curriculum committee, who also all agreed unanimously with the assessment of these educational professionals who presented all of their findings. It was then presented to the personnel committee, who decidedly disagreed. The board members present, elected members of the community that respectfully are not educational professionals, did not support this. It never made it to the meeting agenda. Then in December, a community member, Ms. Sanchez, approached and asked a question about why that discussion item never made it to the agenda. Dr. Beck then referred her to Mr. Morris to address that with her personally. The superintendent referred a community member to another community member about a decision that is essentially to be made by the superintendent. Second scenario, last month at the reorganization meeting, a discussion took place at the board table where various board members argued that the board should be allowed to review teachers' lessons plans prior to them being presented in the classroom. Given that these two scenarios involve decisions that are typically made by administrators, the first one a decision made by our chief school administrator and super, and the second one a practice typically made by building administrators, can those two actions be considered violations of the Board Member Code of Ethics, Section D, that reads, quote, I will carry my responsibility not to administer the schools, but together with my fellow board members to see that they are all well run, end quote. If not, please explain and feel free to use an example of what a violation of that section would look like. This is only 1 month into this new board's full year of service, and based on the very first meeting of the year, a reorganization meeting nonetheless, as a parent, we're all hoping the Code of Ethics presentation will soon be introduced to this board, very, very soon. She thanks you. Excuse me. Back to my own self, when we were campaigning, we said that the board's job is to support the district, not to control it. So I encourage the new board to strive to understand that. Thank you.
Good evening, Neil Clark, Springbrook Trail in Sparta. I am talking to you tonight not in my capacity as deputy mayor, nor in my capacity as a liaison to this board, but really in my capacity as a step-parent to 2 children in the school district, one at the high school, one at the middle school, also 2 stepchildren who matriculated through the Sparta school system, because I wanted to share with you a very positive experience that I recently had with the middle school teachers. So this was about 3 days before Christmas break, and it was a parent-teacher conference, and you can imagine all the students are very fidgety and the teachers are very harried, and so I didn't expect much from this meeting because they were busy, we were busy, and so I thought it would be kind of in and out, perfunctory, here's how your student is doing, here's what they're learning. It was exactly the opposite of that. They took over an hour. Each teacher was there. And I will say their names now because I was just so struck with their professionalism and their compassion. They were Mr. Kraus, Mr. Frangione, Ms. Gerlich, Mr. Jacobson, can't read my own handwriting, Ms. Collister, Counselor Ms. Matthias, and Vice Principal Ms. Shefferman, sorry. What I got from that meeting was that they care about the student. Not the student of whether that student is spitting back to them just simple things that they learn, or spitting back some kind of ideology that the teacher may have. But they cared about that person as a citizen who eventually become a man, who eventually will be expected by his community to serve that community. And they took that obligation seriously. And I was just so impressed. I have 4 children of my own who matriculated through a very difficult school in the suburbs of Philadelphia, a very demanding school. And I can tell you that given my vast experience with, I can't tell you how many parent-teacher conferences over the years, they were better and prepared and cared about the student. And I think it's worth remembering that. When this board does any type of policy, to think about the effect that may have on the teacher's ability to teach. And go with the presumption of good faith, a presumption that that teacher is acting in the best interest of the student, not to foist any kind of ideology on that student, but to prepare that student for a world in which there are different viewpoints, different people, and what social scientists would say a pluralistic society, one that takes on all different aspects. And so it's really incumbent on the teacher to care about the critical thinking skills of that student, the empathy that student may have. And that's what I got from those teachers that day. And I was really impressed, and I thank all the teachers for their service, and I can't tell you
Your
how
time's
happy
up,
I am.
sir.
Thank you.
Martin Wells-Miller, 25 Woodcrest Avenue, Bud Lake, New Jersey. Congratulations to the new board members who are here tonight and the existing ones. I'm a gentleman who speaks across the state to boards, and just for the record, I want to state I love the fact that you abstain when you're supposed to abstain. And regarding to the video recordings, I think it is important because in other districts I've been to, the recordings don't match the minutes most time, including in my own town, and I complain to them all the time. The recordings don't match the minutes, and sometimes it's a benefit to protect you guys as well when the transcription takes place. Now, with that being said, I have a prepared statement, and I have something here to hand to the board in today. Most of the board members here probably received 2 emails from me today concerning a very important issue to me regarding code of conduct and ethics. All right, all of you guys are familiar with NJSA 18A-12-24.1, right? That is the code of conduct for board members. Okay, well, there's also code of conduct for attorneys. And what I'm going to read you tonight, I want to put in public record and to make sure it's on the minutes and it's operable. This is not something that to be hidden. It needs to be out there for the truth, because the truth will set us free. So I'm going to read my little statement here. Greetings, Sparta Board of Ed. I'm here today to ask questions, provide information on the Board of Education that I want to be on public record and will be subject to state OPRA guidelines. Your Board of Ed attorney is subject to a New Jersey Office of Attorney Ethics grievance filed on December 22nd, 2022. I'm sure that some of you are aware of this circumstance of this grievance, but for those who are not, apparently your Board of Ed attorney has been sharing emails received in other school district boards with other administrators of other districts that he represents, unredacted, by the way. Okay? One of these several examples provided is the fact that in Randolph, on March 5th at 8:07 p.m., the board superintendent received an email from a community member on a critical of the decision of the board superintendent at that district. The board member then forwarded the email to the attorney at around 8:25 p.m. By 11:03, the email was sent to a private email address with someone who did not need to know. Okay? So to a personal Gmail account, not an official email address of a non-resident school district administrator, specifically stating that the non-resident school district administrator was not to forward the email further. So in that email, he said, do not forward, do not share, because he knew he should not have shared it. Well, was it simply one email or several? Well, from the complaint, it was several, and some of them were confidential, couldn't even be included. I request the Sparta Board of Ed ask him what he has shared from the Sparta Board of Ed without the Sparta Board of Ed authority. According to the ethics grievance, the Board of Ed attorney shared correspondence with third parties without consent, infringing on the confidentiality of multiple school district clients. One more
That's
sentence.
3 minutes, thank you.
One more sentence.
It's 3 minutes, sir, thank
So what I
you.
ask for you now is to do
Sir,
an
it's 3
investigation
minutes.
into the matter.
Respect,
I understand. I want them to do an investigation into the matter.
if you have a handout, you can hand it out, and plus, we got your email, so thank you for your time. Thank you for your time, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Lewis, 19 Angelo Drive, Sparta, New Jersey. I actually came in after the, I know it's kind of a moot point, but I wanted to make sure I was heard with this, because when it was stated we should no longer live stream this meeting because it's in plenty of time, I don't know how you determine when a baby's going to be born, okay? That's a very privileged statement. People work part-time, people work 12-hour shifts. This is the only, usually I'm here, and this is how I came, coming from work, hoping that I would be able to say something. So I hope this is, if we do not have volunteers, I hope this is not a conversation. There should be transparency, and every parent, no matter, even if sometimes you can't watch it, you can't watch it exactly between 7 and 8, and it's a recording, and you're able to at least understand what's even coming through the pipeline. I attend these board meetings because sometimes just looking at the agenda and the video just helps me to understand even what's going on in some of the other schools, just based on where my property taxes and everything else is going. So I'm asking, if for some reason you can't get this volunteering together, do not in any way, shape, or form take this off a live stream. Thank you.
Any?
Hi, Sasha Nelson. I'm a student. This is just a quick question, but I know that in past board meetings, there was a 1-minute warning given to people when they were speaking in the public comment, and I was just wondering if that will continue on in future board meetings. Thank you.
Anyone else? Motion to close public comment number 2. Wendy, second.
Second.
Vanessa, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
For the good of the order? Oh, yeah, sorry, my bad.
This would be in response to Ms. Greina's comments. I do not believe that the 2 issues that she posed violate the administration of the schools provision of the Code of Ethics, which really talks about getting involved in the day-to-day operations of the district if you look at the case law and the code provisions interpreting that section. So no, I do not believe that either of the examples that she gave violated any board member code of ethics.
Okay, now go to the order.
I would just like to say, piggybacking on what Mrs. Rossi presented earlier, I just wanted to say that we had a really positive, productive conversation at our curriculum meeting, and there were so many exciting developments that I wanted to recognize, especially the gifted and talented math program. I thought that was very interesting and exciting. As for the newly implemented health standards, I wanted to clarify that I don't believe any of us were asking for specific lesson plans from individual teachers, and if that was conveyed, that was not the intention. It was rather just transparency, as other districts have done, in which I shared during committee. Just sharing comprehensive, robust curriculum and high-quality resources with parents and community members at large. Things like detailed scope and sequence, unit plans, some of these things could be made available online for people to view. And in this way, I actually feel it supports our educators because it allows them to be fully equipped to implement these new standards with uniformity and in a way that the parents and community at large can have full transparency. Making a truly informed decision about what works best for each family with such highly sensitive information is really not possible without these pieces in place. And it was nice to see that we were all on the same page. So I'd like to thank Dr. Beck and Mrs. Rossi for their collaborative spirit and willingness to work toward a solution that helps everyone involved in bettering our students' education. It's obviously not been a very easy few years for districts across the state, Sparta in particular, and I would like to acknowledge and support Sparta's exceptional teachers, instructional support staff, and administration for all they do for the students. And that's all.
I just want to echo something that Dr. Beck had mentioned earlier, specifically regarding the audit, and thank Joanne and Dr. Beck and Ms. Rossi and all of our administrators across the district. There's, you know, you guys hear, you know, the public hears us vote yes or no on that item specifically, but the amount of work that goes into preparing a budget and keeping the district on track, and having good audits 2 years in a row is really an amazing feat. So thank you for all your hard work.
Anyone else?
I also wanted to mention, you know, December, we had kind of a unconventional meeting since we had to go virtual, and I did want to highlight to the public the Finance 17.2, where we approved as a board the preliminary design called it was option study on the agenda. And I think it may have been missed just because, like Craig said, we moved through business so quickly. But it's a really important expenditure. And as we account for every dollar, we don't do it lightly, but it was a $28,000, $500 expenditure to prepare the option study for preliminary design services for new elementary school. And I know that all of us are so excited to hear about that. And we all support that as the next step in this process. So thank you for sharing the feasibility study that was asked for. And I'm glad that we can see this moving forward.
Yeah, Lauren, actually, I received an email today. So that study has begun. And I actually received an email today from the architect with a proposal of a piece of land and what the school might look like on that piece of land. So that was the first step. I literally received it this afternoon. So I'll share that with the board and we'll continue those discussions.
That's excellent. If you build it, they will come, right?
Chad?
And I just had a suggestion about the testing, because after attending board meetings, I see that testing is very important to adults. So I thought I'd offer some. So I thought I'd offer some student perspective, and I see that there's a fear that the results may be misleading because of student participation or how much they try on the test as an aspect. And I think that if you would communicate with students that or what the test is for, and it's not like for the new testing that's not a state requirement, I think it would be important for students to know that, hey, you're going to come back to school and you're going to be tested to see how much you remember and how you do. I think when students go into homeroom and say, hey, you're taking a 2-hour test, it's not very motivating. But if you say, like, or I know that Ms. Kopp talked about a student who was great at English, but she didn't try in the testing, so then she got put in extra help and had to meet with her during lunch. And students like, oh, why am I here? And she's like, oh, you're put in it. I just think that goals should be communicated with students and know that this isn't a graduation requirement, but it is to help you. So they should know that, and then they would may be inclined to try harder.
I know. Anything else? Once, twice, no. Okay, we're now going to convene into closed session. Whereas Section 8 of the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, provides for the exclusion of the public from the meeting in certain circumstances, and whereas the Sparta Township Board of Education is of the opinion that such circumstances exist to discuss negotiation matters and attorney-client privilege, which is exempt from public participation pursuant to New Jersey Public Law 1975, Chapter 231, Open Public Meeting Act. Now therefore be it resolved that the Sparta Township Board of Education shall enter an executive session on January 19th at 8:29. The board will reconvene into public session at the conclusion of the executive session, and there'll be no action taken while in closed session.
Or when we return, right?
Could I have a motion? Christina, second.
Second.
Joanne?
How long are we going to be?
No, half hour, 45 minutes.
3.
She'll leave. She'll leave if I say it's real.
You got to take a vote now.
Yes, I need to take a vote. We need to take a vote.
Okay.